I'm Karen Stevens, and you are watching Spotlight on the Arts. We have a really unique show for you today, so let's start by introducing our panelists. Michael McKeever is an award-winning playwright, set designer, actor, and jack of all trades. Bill Hirschman is an arts journalist and a founder of FloridaTheaterOnStage.com. And our guest panelist today is Kevin Black, a producer who creates spectacular shows that can be seen in South Florida and on cruise ships. But before I introduce our guest for today, I want you to check out this video. What you just saw was something you would not find in a local theater. You would have to go on a cruise to see it, which brings us to our special guest today. She is someone who has broken the glass ceiling and almost single-handedly brought entertainment to the cruise ships. I'm talking about Jean Ann Ryan. Welcome, Jean Ann.
Thank you.
It is great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
Excellent.
You helm one of the largest production and entertainment companies in the country. How did that happen?
It's a long story. It's a very long story. I think really it started when I was in college. Mm-hmm. I mean, I really started producing, as we do, in college, and I actually started to put together a company at that time, and then it just evolved from there.
Was that your vision? Or was it something that you just fell into?
I am very lucky for being at the right place at the right time. So I'm not even sure I had time for a vision. I was just, as you know, that's 75% of the equation, mm-hmm. and I was just lucky to be there.
Mm-hmm. You started out as an entertainer yourself?
I actually started out as a ballet dancer, mm-hmm. and so I think that's still my great love. And I was trained at the conservatory in Cincinnati. And Suzanne Farrell was my teacher.
Wow.
And actually, I was there when George Balanchine came and took her and came and swept her away. And Leroy Reams was my tap teacher. So anyway, I started as a ballet dancer. And then from there, in college, there was a circuit called Kenley Players. Mm-hmm. They were on the star system. Mm-hmm. And so I made a career out of Hello, Dolly, and Fiddler on the Roof. Wow. And so I mean, a big, so I worked with every famous cantor. I did Jan Pierce, Harry Gaz, Ed Ames, not a cantor, but worked with him. I was Havala. And for Hello, Dolly, I was Minnie Fay. I did with Ann Miller. I directed Betty White in it, and I directed Edie Adams in it. Mm-hmm. So I had a performing career as well. And I also did Butterflies Are Free with Keir Delay and Eileen Heckert. Wow. She's scary. Real scary.
Well, how does that work? How did you transition from performer to producer?
As we all do, we have to eat and pay for our lessons, and so we do what we have to do to do that. And so basically, it was never a decision, oh, I'm going to do this now. It was an evolution more than anything,
Interesting.
Really. Yeah.
Do you miss it? Do you miss performing at this point? Or?
I perform all the time.
Don't we all?
I perform all the time, and I take ballet all the time, so I haven't stopped.
Was your focus primarily on the performance end? I mean, as far as dance or vocals, or was there something that you focused on primarily, or you were all encompassing as far as?
I was a real good triple threat. Mm-hmm. I can sing, I can dance, I can act. I was trained that way. My mother was actually a dance teacher, and so I think I had the best of all the training. And so I was very equipped, and as we know, you're trained by the time you're 16, and if not, it's probably too late. Mm-hmm. So I was very lucky to be trained in all of the aspects.
So when you started producing, you started producing shows or reviews first, or all of the above?
I actually, When I was still in college, I was brought in as the creative talent for a series of theme parks. They were called Taft at the time and then Paramount. And I was brought in to create the shows, to direct them and choreograph them. So I really started there with the theme parks and then moved into the cruise industry.
Wow. Is this what you envisioned for your company, the great success that you had? Of course, it's something you hope for, but is it beyond your wildest dreams, what it's developed into?
My life is beyond my wildest dreams. You know, I wish I could say I had this focus and I was going to do that, but I've just been very lucky. And I've had people very kind to me, very helpful to me. And even when I was working in a man's world, people were always very nice to me. Wow. So I had lots of help, and it was more of a, like, why not do that? It's working out well.
Also, I suspect you're good at what you do, and so that plays some part
Well,
in
I like to think so. Thank
Talk
you.
about the scope of what your operation is now. How many different arms are there? How spread out is what you're doing?
Right now, I think we have a focus, probably for the first time. And right now, our focus is really now on land. We want to create shows on land. We want to tour them, and we're working on Broadway properties. We're looking for properties to take in, and we are now investing in Broadway. And so this is something we've always wanted to do, because everybody in my company is a theater person. Mm-hmm. We're not really cruise people, we're really theater people first. And so this is something we've always wanted to do, and I would say right now that is our focus.
Well, how spread out when you were doing the cruise ships? How many were you doing? How many shows?
Crazy.
I remember you had several different things going at one
spread
time.
Out. Crazy. I mean, I think at one time we had 21 ships, and I had 3 shows on land. I had one in Seoul, Korea. I had one, I mean, crazy.
Wow.
Crazy, like no life at all. But I enjoyed it. But I'm happy where I am right now.
So your land endeavor, is it just centralized, or is it spread out throughout the country?
It'll be spread out. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're just really starting it now, and we have a show that will be touring the performing arts centers, and then we're opening up some new theaters. And then actually we're talking with somebody locally about something really exciting. And if you ask me back, I'll tell you about it later. Later.
This new land endeavor, we'll call it that, does that mean that you'll be stepping away from this cruise ship entertainment industry?
Probably. What happens always in the industry right now, the transition is in-house. We don't want to be in-house. My shows are performing on many of the ships, but we want to take a step back, and we want to do this now. So, yes.
Interesting.
To answer that, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. And some of you may know that I got my start with Gina and Ryan. She's my first professional contract, and I learned so much from you as not only how to produce a show, but really how to run a business. So I don't think what a lot of people know about Gina is that she's an incredible businesswoman, and I learned so much from you. And I was curious, like for me, starting as a dancer, and I know you started as a ballet dancer, I wonder if that, that determination, I mean, when you're in class, you don't talk, you don't speak, it's very, that taught me a lot about how to move forward in business. I wonder if that helped you out as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I am the most disciplined person you will find. Absolutely. And actually, as you know, because you are trained by the time you're 18, when I went to college, I have a business degree. So I took that education, but I must say you didn't need it. My ballet training and dance training could have done it for me as well, because you do learn how to deal with people, how to respect people's space, how to show up on time, how to practice your craft, and how to be ready at all times. So I think absolutely 100% that, so it wasn't so, I had crazy years, many crazy years, being Norway being the most crazy. And I think without that discipline, I couldn't have survived, really.
Yeah, speaking of the Norway, so you started with the theme park contracts and conceiving, directing, choreographing, writing shows for them. Was one of my first professional gigs. And then how did that transition into working with Norwegian Cruise Lines and other cruise lines? What was that bridge from theme park to the cruise line industry?
I think with incredibly wonderful things in life, very hard work ends up with very good luck. So that was part of it. But I was in Florida avoiding the cold New York winters. And while I was here in Florida, through a fortuitous series of events, I met the director of entertainment for which at the time was Norwegian Caribbean Cruise Line, and that was Peter Compton. And at that time, they needed, and I choreographed everything in town. I was here, I taught class, I choreographed everything, and did my show at night. And so, and that was I was doing My Fair Lady with Noel Harrison and Virginia Vestoff.
Oh, wow. There's a
Yeah,
name I haven't heard in a while.
Is she fabulous? Fabulous.
Yeah.
I thought you guys would know her. and so I was choreographing many, many things, and so the director of entertainment, Peter, came to me and said, General Motors has come to our cruise line and they want a charter. They want big entertainment. I can do that. I can do that. I can definitely do that. And so they want a line of dancers. I can do that. And so I put together a show, and it was on all of their ships. And remember, the cruise line was in its infancy at that time, right? And there were the only big player was Norwegian Caribbean Cruise Line. And so those shows became very successful, and they stayed on those ships. Those ships were called the White Ships. We don't know why. Some marketing survey, millions of dollars, you're going to call these ships the White Ships. And the Norway will be called the Norway. And those reviews became the Sea Legs review. But at that time, Knut Kostler, who was the visionary of the cruise line, bought the SS France. And I would say that was one of the most exciting times of my life, because they asked me to oversee the renovation of the public rooms, the theater, and the other 2 performing rooms, and create the show program. I'd never even taken a cruise in my life. I'd never even been on a cruise ship. And I was like, I can do that. Yeah, definitely.
I can ride a horse.
And so I spent 6 months in Greenwich at the National Maritime Museum learning what a cruise ship is and the history of it. And then I was sent to Bremerhaven, Germany to do this renovation. And what we did is we went into the cinema and we came forward and created probably the first proscenium theater, I think, on the high seas. And that's kind of the way it happened.
You're going to have to forgive me for getting all fanboy here, but you realize you pretty much created an entire industry. You realize that.
She did. Gina and Ryan created what entertainment is today on a cruise line.
That's pretty amazing.
That's very sweet. Thank you. That's very sweet.
Do you now, considering how your brand, how this company that you created has boomed into what it is now, do you have time to do any choreography? Have you stepped away from that part of your life at this point, or?
You know, what I've learned is that it's better to pick the creative ones and let them do it, because there is an evolution, although I thought it was pretty great in my day, but there is an evolution of that, and it's best to go to the best person for choreography. I will always direct, but in terms of choreography, I don't even think I miss it that much, really. I don't like it if something is not done well. I'll be like, I don't think that's very good. Could we fix that? But basically, I'm happy to hire other people to do that.
But there was a moment when the entertainment that you were putting forward went from reviews, basically large reviews, to actually doing Broadway shows, adapted Broadway shows. So, talk a little bit about how that came apart.
I think that was what was also very important about the show program we created. Yeah. I think probably we did the first fully licensed Broadway shows, and we're talking 1980 now. Yeah. That's the year, and you know, that was the cruise line. Nobody knew from the cruise line, and we didn't want to know about the cruise line. So getting rights to do a show was very, very difficult. And the hardest one to get the rights for was from Andrew Lloyd Webber. But one that was interesting was Cameron Mackintosh. I always went to London to see theater or New York to see theater, and so I knew lots of people in London, and so I went to a concert that was called Hey Mr. Producer, and it was honoring Cameron Mackintosh, and it was done some benefit for something. I was like, oh, that would be good for the ships. I want to do that. And so I literally went to him and said, I want to do that, and he was like, okay. He said, okay, we'll
that
do that.
easy?
Yeah,
That's
and
great.
he was so generous. I had the original Les Mis costumes. I had the advantage of all the scenic designers and costume designers in building our show. He came on the ship with us. He did the opening night speech.
Wow.
There were a few problems though. He was like, that drop, it's moving. Yeah. Yeah, that's a ship. Yeah, it moves. Stop it. My nephew worked for me. Nephew, go stop it. He would climb up and hold it with,
Wow.
a death threat
Oh,
to
how
not
funny.
drop it. Yeah, but he was very, very generous, and I think he loved having a ship. And on the opening, which was probably in Bremerhaven, he said, "Well, just send a jet for me." I'm like, "Oh no, I can't do that. We don't have jets to send for anybody." And he said, "Oh, I'll take my own." Oh, good idea. That's good.
It's good to
That's
meet
good.
Cameron, let me tell you.
It's good. And when we went to New York to one of the inaugural events, he invited every who's who person in theater on board. I mean, the Hammerstein organization, the Schubert organization, I mean, everybody. And I couldn't breathe. I was like, oh my God. And it was just so exciting, such a wonderful opportunity.
It's amazing.
When you take a show like that, or any book show, do you have to adjust it? Do you have to cut it down? Do you have to revise it for a cruise performance?
Sometimes, depending on the ship and the itinerary and whatever the demographic of that passenger was. So the tricky one, then the one people later on had a lot of trouble with, not me, was Greece.
Yeah.
So Greece.
How so?
Greece, they didn't want to give the rights to Greece, but they did give me the rights. And Jim Jacobs came with me to the ship to put that show up. And I was like, I really need to make some cuts here. And he said, okay. And he'd go to his cabin and he'd write them and bring them back. I'm like, great. And also directing that, I had Walter Bobby directing that. Wow. And so it was fascinating because I don't think you could ever pull that off today.
Right.
And to have their blessing on it. And I was like, I really like that song from the movie. Do you think we could put that song in there? Oh, okay. I'm like, really? And so you ended up with a really good property with their blessing. And that was a miracle.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
that would be a
fantastic.
miracle today,
Yeah.
even.
Yeah. So obviously that opened up a lot of doors for you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, for having all the mucky mucks
Yeah.
there. And so when you you say you leave it up to the other talent to do the choreography, et cetera, are those people that you've trained in your company that move up, or do you hire from the outside, or how do you do that?
I would say in this case, I'm hiring, well, with the exception of Kevin, who is brilliant, who I would be honored to have working for me. Again.
Save the day.
Again. Depending on what show I'm doing. So if I'm going to do a very modern contemporary show, I'm going to go to LA. I'm going to take all those video choreographers that know how to do short bits and really appeal to that younger audience. I'm going that way. If I'm doing another Broadway show, I'm going to go to Broadway and I'm going to say who's the best director, who's the best choreographer, and that's who I'm going to use. And that's pretty much how I've done. I did Saturday Night Fever with Robert Stigwood on board.
Oh, wow.
And these people are not easy. They're not, you're like this the whole time, hoping like nobody talks back to them or something.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And what about talent itself? How do you find your talent? I know you audition a lot around the country
A lot.
and out of the country, but what are the specifics as far as obtaining talent and maintaining talent?
I have a very broad talent base because I've just been doing it for so long, and I think my requirements are the same as yours. I think they're the same. I'm looking for the best trained triple threat. That's what I want. And if you're not well trained, then I'm nervous. I don't trust it. So at the end of my combination, no matter what the combination is, hip hop, jazz, tap, whatever, they will still have to do a proper double pirouette and a perfect first arabesque because and a développé à la seconde. And I want to see that training and make sure that it's there. And I audition on all the hot spots, London, Paris, New York, Las Vegas. And I'm always amazed by the quality of their talent everywhere. It's just so good. And it's talent that you want to work with, and it never stops amazing me that it just keeps coming. It just keeps coming, and it's just they're delicious, really.
It's always refreshing to see a director who goes to auditions excited, as opposed to, oh my God, I have to go to an audition. It's how you find the best, is when you go with that attitude, looking to be, you're excited to see new talent.
I used to do the auditions myself, but like in London, it was not unusual for us to see 1,000 people. And I mean, like they closed down Pineapple because it's too full, and so usually we have half the room, the whole place. Inside, we do an audition, then the other half are out on the street. But I had to stop because they can't see me. I was too short. So I had to get somebody, you know, much bigger, because really in a crowd like that, you can't be seen. How they learn that combination in a crowd like that and why they would do that is beyond me. I would look at that room and go, I'm going to go have a glass of wine. I'll be back when that's over.
Yeah, I noticed the pictures on your website show all these auditions, and they're just oodles, gobs of people lined up outside the door. That's pretty impressive.
There's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you know what? We see all of them, and we don't lose a form. You know, at the end of the day, you know, literally you've seen 1,000 people, and when there's one person, one form, you're like, yes, yes. And that is a tribute to my team of wonderful people that work for me. That's not me. I'm sitting there, you know, going, okay, that one, that one, that one. But it's a big talent to be able to do that fast. And not lose anybody in the process.
Yeah. Speaking of, how many people do you have working for you, your team?
You know, I've
On an
always
average.
had a small group. It's always a small, you know, 8 to 10 when I'm not in production. When I'm in production, that doubles, you know, and goes much higher. But even when I had 21 ships, I had the same size company. So we just kind of, we kind of know what we're doing at this point and know how to do it and efficient and
Well, that
quick.
actually, that makes sense. If, you know, a tight group of people who really know what they're doing is, I would imagine, much better than 20 people who don't.
Exactly. And then you develop a shorthand. Like,
Sure.
Eric, who works for me, finishes my sentences. For me, I spend more time with him than my husband. So,
Would you talk a little about these land productions that you're working on?
well, one of the specialties that we created over the time, really that specialty we created through the cruise industry, but it's designing ships and speccing state-of-the-art equipment. And so through that specialty, we did a lot of work for Sheraton. And so I did the Sheraton Bow Harbor shows here until it became a condo or something, until the whole thing got torn down. So, and we did that in Aruba and New Orleans, and so that's what we like to do. We like to go in and create our own theater and put the show in it that's right for the demographics. And one of the shows that we have now is just called Curtain Up on Broadway, and that's a beautiful show with Broadway singers. And it's the one that we talked about putting Lea Salonga in as a star turn to tour with it, and that's what we're working on now.
And that's how you're treating it, as a tour.
Yeah. Just starting it.
You've worked with a lot of networks and award show presentations, and I mean, like really, really big name productions. Do they solicit you? How does that happen? Like, say, for an award show.
Almost always they come to me. Yeah, I mean, and again, that's just incredible luck. So, but most of my career, people have come to me and say, "Can you do this?" And whether I could or not, I would say, "Yes, yes, I can do that." and so, I mean, one of the things we did was put Wheel of Fortune on the ship. I'm not a big TV person, so I had never even seen the game. Okay. I didn't even know how the game worked, and somebody was desperately trying to explain it to me. And but it was very exciting also because everybody, Vanna and whoever that guy is,
Pat
Sajak.
that guy,
him.
they all came to Miami, and we met and worked things out, and it was very exciting. But
I would imagine it was
normally
a great success, too.
It was enormous. great ratings, and everybody had fun. It was a lot of fun.
So if anyone wants to find out more about you and your company, your production company, can you give us the website that they can visit?
Yes. Thank you for asking. It's Gina and Ryan Productions.
Gina and Ryan
That's it,
Productions.
Gina and Ryan Productions.
Okay, and there's lots of stuff on YouTube that people can find.
Probably, yeah. I would think there'd be plenty, a fair amount, but there's a lot on our website, and then we have a jar promo that you can find through the website that's a more current idea. It's more current, but it's more about production, what we're doing in production-wise. And so it gives you a lot of, way more information than you want. It will give you.
Yeah.
And it sets the audition calls, tells you when the auditions are and where.
That's great. Before we go, for that aspiring performer who's out there who wants to be a triple threat, and especially to work for Gina and Ryan Productions, what would you tell them?
You know, this is corny, but I really believe in following your dream, and don't be so hard on yourself. You know, striving for perfection is a fool's dream. Just do it. You know, don't let people tell you, just do it. Do what you think you can do. Have confidence in yourself. And that would be my advice.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
That's great advice, and it makes me wish I was that 21-year-old again, so I can come
Me too.
out.
Me too. That makes two of us.
And with that, we have to bring this program to a close so that we can all run out and book a cruise. But remember, Gina and Ryan's formula for success is, yeah, I can do that. So remember that. I know for a fact that the creator of this program, Ira Zacher, used to go on many cruises just to see the outstanding entertainment. So thank you, Gina Ann, for making that possible.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
And thank you to our panelists today for your great conversation. And thank you, our viewing audience, for joining us today. Spotlight on the Arts is a community program, so we want you, the community, to get involved. You may subscribe to our email newsletter or simply drop us a line and tell us what you think. Our email address is spotlightonthearts@browardschools.com. And while you are at your computer, please go to floridatheateronstage.com and check out the events, reviews, and arts calendar. And as Iris would say, please go to the theater. Pick out a show and make sure you support all the wonderful local theater that we have here in South Florida. And of course, tune in next week for another episode of Spotlight on the Arts.